Attempting to murder innocent children is wrong.
Stunning and brave.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into some of Screen Rant's content. If you're not familiar with Screen Rant, then well done. Screen Rant is great because whenever anyone makes the argument that something is popular and therefore it's good, you can show how much of a fallacy that is by bringing up Screen Rant, because they're really popular. How many subscribers have they got? I forgot to check before I did this take, so I can't tell you right now without dubbing it in afterwards. But it's a lot. Today I'm going to be focusing on Screen Rant's total incompetence when talking about things like ethics, right and wrong, good and bad. Let's take a look at this video about Rick and Morty called Why Rick Sanchez is an Excellent Grandfather. I'm sorry, what? Rick Sanchez is an excellent grandfather? Do you not watch this show? What's going on? They say don't judge a book by its cover, but I can't see any way that a video with that title could be anything other than completely ludicrous. Also, isn't that like the job of a cover? Like to give you an impression of whether or not you might like the book? Fuck it.
Rick Sanchez is an excellent grandfather. Yeah, I said it.
And I feel dumber for having heard it, but please do go on.
Rick is usually like the worst person ever. I guess that comes with the territory of being the most intelligent person in the universe. As a result, Rick tends to overindulge and acts a little recklessly from time to time.
And these babies just saved this lame-ass party! Wubba lubba dub dub!
But he's an amazing grandparent nonetheless.
Okay, so there's our opening statement, and we've already got a lot to cover. Let's start by talking about that clip they chose to show just before saying what an excellent grandfather Rick is. I'm not going to say that Rick getting off his tits on a completely fictional substance makes him a bad grandfather on its own. However, he just did a line of what I can only assume are crushed up geodes. That's the good shit right there. In front of his 14-year-old grandson. Okay, definitely on thin ice now. He got those geodes by sending his grandson out to get them for him on a mission so dangerous that one of the 3 people who went didn't come back. Because he died. Just to clarify, that clip you just showed there was Rick risking his grandson's life so that he could get high.
But he's an amazing grandparent nonetheless. Okay, I didn't say that he's the best.
Oh, okay, no, saying he was the best would be silly. Now, I would argue that once someone's done something like that, they're just not a good grandfather anymore. Maybe you're going to argue that he used to be a bad grandfather, but over time became a good grandfather. That could be interesting. Acknowledging that he was an awful grandfather when he did these things, but arguing that over time he's changed and redeemed himself. Or that he might be a bad grandfather to Morty, but is a great grandfather to Summer, you know, that girl that he abandoned in a post-apocalyptic hellscape that he created. Although, of course, both those points would be completely wrong as well. It's just that the evidence I've brought up so far wouldn't have counted them yet. But before we move on to seeing what the rest of the argument is, let's take a look back at some more of the things you said in that opening statement.
Rick tends to overindulge and acts a little recklessly from time to time.
Oh, he overindulges and he acts a little recklessly from time to time. Oh no. This is of course ridiculously understating the magnitude of Rick's complete irresponsibility, because anything other than a ridiculous understatement of just how irresponsible Rick is will make it immediately apparent that he's not a good grandfather. For example, in the pilot episode, he tries to wipe out humanity. He's put a group of superheroes, himself and his grandson, through a series of literal death games against their will. This shot is brilliant and should be shown in every film studies class. The way he's framed in the butt, it's like he is the poo. But I digress. Let's have a look at when they start bringing up evidence to support their claim.
What constitutes a good grandparent, you know? You certainly have to factor in how much they care for one another and how much value they bring to each other's lives. In fairness, only Rick could define what being a good grandfather means to him, and only Morty could attest if this were true or not.
They quickly move it to a place of what does being a good grandparent mean to the individual? How do the people who are a part of this dynamic feel about it? And while how the people who are in the relationship feel about the relationship is an important part of assessing the dynamic between any two characters, no amount of positive feelings between the two can excuse this kind of dysfunctional behaviour. If when I was 14 I had a father figure who let me drink alcohol, skip school, and openly defend the DCEU movies, I'd probably have loved that at the time. It doesn't make them a good father figure. But of course we all knew that already, it's just good to have cards on the table.
Knowing Rick's egotistical way of being, it's safe to assume that he sees himself as a pretty awesome grandfather. He tends to think highly of himself in pretty much every regard, so why would this be any different?
One key aspect of Rick's personality that Screen Rant misses with this point is his apathy. He, for example, very clearly doesn't care if he's a good father-in-law to Jerry, and often demonstrates a similar attitude with his relationship towards Morty.
Our relationship must be pretty special to span over all those different timelines.
Yeah, it's gotta be that way. You're a camouflage.
Camouflage?
The best way to hide from an enemy's radar is to stand near someone with complementary brainwaves that make ours invisible. The genius waves get canceled out by the, Morty waves.
What a great grandfather! It's not explicitly clear whether he values being a good grandfather or not. The closest we get to an absolute answer to how he views their relationship is in Rest and Ricklaxation, in which it's revealed that Rick does have an attachment towards Morty, but that he considers that attachment to be toxic and irrational.
Oh, I had all my problems removed. My entitlement, my narcissism, my irrational attachments. Morty, not that I give a but are you okay?
There's room for interpretation here, but I'd be willing to wager that the fact that Rick considers the fact that he has any kind of emotional attachment towards his grandson a problem, that he doesn't really value being a good grandfather. Although whether or not he considers himself to be a good grandfather is kind of a moot point when we're talking about a guy who, I don't know, repeatedly makes his grandson relive traumatic memories for his own personal amusement. Ha ha ha, I just love seeing my grandson traumatized, I'm such an excellent grandfather.
Okay, I didn't say that he's the best, but he's pretty good.
No, he's not. So to sum up with that one, you're probably wrong, but even if you were right, it wouldn't matter. When arguing from Morty's point of view, they say that Morty must be happy with his relationship with his grandfather because he keeps going on adventures with his grandfather.
From Morty's perspective, he too probably thinks highly of his grandpapa. Actions speak louder than words, and I think the truest sign of Morty's love for Rick is the fact that he keeps joining him on all of these adventures.
Thanos is an excellent father to Nebula. Yeah, I said it. So what? He might have tortured her, forced her into ritual combat on a regular basis, and if she lost, cut her apart and then stitched her back together with robot bits. Okay, I didn't say he's the best. He's still pretty good. But after all that, she's still by his side. So she must be getting something out of it, right? That was my human emotions are a little more complicated than that noise.
Sure, he does a lot of horrible stuff to Morty,
You're a monster!
but ultimately he cares about him. Rick is just he's a unique guy.
The genius waves get canceled out by the, Morty waves.
Did you hear the discomfort in his voice when he said, he's just a unique guy? Almost as if he was actively aware that Rick is genuinely a terrible person and that if anyone actually buys into this, it could send an actively harmful message. Or, maybe I'm just projecting my emotions onto him and he thought saying it that way would be funny or something. Like, whoa, he's abusive. How wacky.
They butt heads from time to time, but that's just because Rick can't understand Morty.
Actually, in the clip that you're showing of them butting heads, it's because Rick is trying to wipe out humanity. You actually mentioned this later in the video.
In the pilot, Rick manufactures something called a neutrino bomb,
I had to make a bomb, Morty.
which is meant to wipe out all of humanity on Earth. His game plan, which comes after a few too many bevies, is to get Morty and then go get his crush Jessica and make sure that the two of them are safe and then wipe out the rest of the planet.
What a great grandfather. Man, this video sure is the worst thing to ever happen on 9/11. I can't put that joke in the video.
He doesn't know what it's like to be a regular person with normal thoughts, so they're bound to clash on occasion.
Knew it, you piece of You're a Rick!
However, he spends so much time with Morty, clearly taking a massive interest in him. Rick is testing his grandson. Think about it. Every failure that Morty has, Rick usually leads him right there. Yet, he always ends up safe in the end. That's because these are meant to be teaching moments. Horrible, painful, miserable lessons, but lessons nonetheless.
Okay, let's humor that for a second. Let's talk about the context of the clip you were showing, of Morty breaking his legs. Rick gives Morty some shoes that he tells him can let him walk on any surface.
Walk on any surface you want, Morty. Up, down, below. Your have to turn them on, Morty. The shoes have to be turned on.
Now, I would say that this is neglect and negligence, and that Rick is responsible for Morty breaking his legs here. But Screen Rant is arguing that no, actually it's okay. This was supposed to be a teaching moment. Rick intended for Morty to break his legs, which makes it better and not worse.
Okay, I didn't say that he's the best.
You know, it's funny, earlier I brought up Thanos as like part of a little bit, saying that he's totally a great father to Nebula, comparing their justification of Rick's actions to me justifying Thanos' actions. But that bit couldn't be more relevant now, because the ways he abuses Nebula literally are supposed to be teaching moments from his perspective. He forces her to fight Gamora so that she can learn to fight better, which obviously is no justification for abuse. I feel insulted that I even need to say that to a person. But here you are, like, hey, Rick is an excellent grandfather to Morty because he's doing it all on purpose. Which he isn't, by the way. That's another thing I forgot to mention until now. While it's possible to interpret some of the things that Rick does in the show as intentional to teach Morty a lesson, more often than not it's situations like this where he gets blackout drunk and then puts everyone, including himself, through a death trap. Or this where Rick sends Morty out to get drugs. I guess the lesson was that Rick wants drugs. Or this, that Rick literally intends to erase from Morty's mind after he's done fucking with him. Oh, he'll learn so many lessons from that thing he can't remember.
So Rick takes an interest in Morty, he teaches him valuable life lessons, he puts him ahead of everything else, and he's his closest companion. Tell me again how that's a terrible grandparent?
If you genuinely believe that Rick Sanchez is a good grandparent, you are either mind-numbingly, beyond stupid, or a genuinely disgusting person. I'll let you take your pick. You can be either, I don't really care. Screen Rant just sort of excusing horrible actions isn't unique to this video either. Here's another video. This one's called 10 Animated Movie Villains Who Were Actually Right.
Before we count down, be sure to click that subscribe button and stay up to date with all the content coming your way from Screen Rant. Also, can you guess the hit animated film based off of these emojis?
Is it maybe a chicken run?
Absolutely impossible. We're on a cross-country.
Shere Khan. Shere Khan is one evil dude. The terrifying—
You know what, let's skip the antics, I'll give you their full list right now. Their 10 animated movie villains who are actually right are Shere Khan, Sid, Ursula, the hyenas from The Lion King, Hook, Maleficent, Hades, Syndrome, Lotso, and Gaston. Just gonna give you a second to let all that sink in. You know, just think about all the things that those characters did. You know, what their motivations were. And then I'm going to play this clip.
A hero is only as good as the villain, or so the saying goes. But what happens when the villain may have actually been in the right?
So these are villains they think may have been in the right. You probably have your favorite from this list where you're like, what? That's not entirely the noise I was going for there, but I'll roll with it. But for the now, I want to focus on Shere Khan, whose entire goal and motivation was to kill a child. Hey, that's what the intro was about. Let's see them argue that he was right.
Khan was merciless and had it out for the man-cub known as Mowgli. Considering Mowgli is just a child and hasn't done anything to warrant such hatred, we definitely sided against the tiger in this conflict.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? I think most of us sided with the innocent child who has done nothing wrong over the tiger who wanted to murder him. But, you know, each to their own, I suppose.
But let's stop and evaluate the beef when taking in what's going on around the jungle. No matter if you're looking at the conflict in the 1800s when the original book was written or in modern times, humans are doing some serious damage to the wildlife in regions like India. We came with weapons, hunted to the point of extinction, and burned down the jungle. Considering Shere Khan is a Bengal tiger, an animal that's on the endangered species list, he's rightfully worried about having a human so close to him. Khan bears the scars of previous conflicts and obviously thinks that any human interaction will lead to trouble for the animal kingdom.
Ah, okay, he was right because he was doing it out of racial prejudice. Gotcha. Shere Khan is right because in his experiences, other humans have done bad things. So it only makes sense that he tries to kill this child.
Humans largely have done more damage than good in his point of view.
They just seem to be stating the motivation and then, you know, putting them on this list of characters they're saying were right. Yeah, characters have motivations, that's what makes them characters.
We know that Sid's dad is something of a lazy slob and likely a drunk. His mother doesn't seem to have any sort of positive relationship with him either, as she allows explosives to go off regularly in her backyard. It's not so crazy to think that Sid's morbid actions are actually a cry for help.
That's not being right, that's having a motivation, you dipshits.
Sid has no idea that he was blowing up sentient toys. If he had known that, chances are he would have put an end to his antics.
Okay, so he was only doing it because he was ignorant. Being ignorant is now being right. That's convenient for Screen Rant.
That entire conflict boils down to the monarchs not inviting one person to the party. If they were just a bit more open-minded and inviting, then the whole spinning wheels situation and their daughter living her life in the woods wouldn't have happened. The king and queen may not have been besties with Maleficent, but as the royal monarchy, their invite should go out to everyone and not play favorites. When that situation boils down to one person not being invited, well, that's just being cruel. She just wanted to be included, yet she was constantly shunned and outcast by society.
Yeah, that's having a motivation, guys. You know what? He had a really troubled upbringing, and he was only doing it because of how much he cared about Germany. You know what? While I'm here, I want to take a look at their arguments about Syndrome, because I love The Incredibles, and Syndrome is not right. He is not in the right, like he is wrong in horrible ways. He tries to murder children too, actually. There's a scene where he sends missiles to a plane that he knows has children in it, and then he believes that he's killed them and gloats to their father. That's great. Let's hear their justification for why he
May have actually been in the right.
Okay.
His outfit screamed villain and he was seemingly the evilest dude out there. But was he really? We don't think so.
Here is the reaction that Syndrome gives when he believes he's murdered Bob's wife and 2 children.
Target was destroyed.
You'll get over it. I seem to recall you prefer to work alone.
But was he really that evil? We don't think so, because we're stupid garbage people.
At the start of the film, Syndrome is actually just a boy and the biggest fan of Mr. Incredible. Eager to help in any way, he offers his services only to be rejected due to not having any superpowers. Ouch.
What? You mean he has a motivation? Whoa!
Naturally, this had a negative impact on the young boy, and he grew up to become a villain in the eyes of the Incredibles.
Oh, in the eyes of the Incredibles, yeah. He was the villain in the eyes of the Incredibles, probably because he tried to murder their children. That might have had something to do with it. Oh, also all of the other superheroes that he did murder, that's something to mention probably, and also his plan, which we'll get into soon. And by soon, I of course mean right now.
But was Syndrome's plan really all that bad? Sure, perhaps he was a bit naive and not seeing the bigger picture, but all he wanted to do was give regular folks their own superpowers, so they can be the best person they could be.
Have you guys seen this film? Genuine question. Have you seen it? Syndrome's plan is to commit an act of terror by letting a robot destroy part of a city before he swoops in to pretend to save the day from the robot that he sent, so that everyone believes that he is a superhero and he gets respected like a superhero would be. That's Syndrome's plan.
And just when all hope is lost, Syndrome will save the day! I'll be a bigger hero than you ever were.
That's what happens in the film. That's what they're fighting against in the climax of the film. That's why a giant robot tries to destroy a city in the climax of the film. Did you guys not notice that? That big giant robot-shaped thing in the center of the frame? Did you miss it? It's... fuck you. What Syndrome's plan is not is to give everyone else superpowers. That's just not his plan. What I think may have happened is that you heard this one single line from the film.
And when I'm old and I've had my fun, I'll sell my inventions so that everyone can be superheroes. Everyone can be super. And when everyone's super, no one will be.
And decided that this was his entire plan instead of what his actual plan is, even though in this line he mentions how he's only going to do this once he's done. Part of me wants to think that's what happened, although the other part of me, which I think is more rational, is telling me that to do that you would have had to have seen the film. So, clearly that's not what happened. I'm gonna be real, I don't think Syndrome was in the right. Hot take, I know, I think the guy who committed an act of terror so that he could look good was wrong. But that's all I've got for you today, folks. I will leave you with this. Never click on a Screen Rant video because then you will give them ad revenue. Goodbye.